Hello, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome to today's NeoSystems CMMC Town Hall. Now I'd like to introduce your host, Ed Bassett from NeoSystems. Ed?
Hi, welcome everyone to this continuing series of Town Hall Ask Me Anything sessions on the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification Program. This CMMC focused Town Hall series has been going on weekly since May with some holiday breaks. And we've attracted a great and growing audience that's eager to do the right thing with respect to cyber hygiene. So thank you for your attention today. My guest today is Elvis Moreland. He's the CISO from General Datatech, IT systems integrator. I just want to mention to the audience that we are recording these sessions as part of our community outreach to the defense industrial base. At NeoSystems, our focus as a managed service provider is primarily on supporting organizations that are seeking certification. We'll encourage you, if you have questions during the session today, please send those in on the Q&A feature within Zoom, and I will try to work as many of those questions into the discussion with Elvis as I can. I'll start with an introduction of Elvis Moreland. He is the Chief Information Security Officer for IT Integrator General Datatech. This is a new role for Elvis. Prior to joining GDT, Elvis has held multiple CISO roles, also consulted for the government and the defense industrial base in the cybersecurity space. Elvis is a veteran, served in both the Air Force and the Navy. I was a little disappointed to find out he hadn't served in the Army, but he was in Army ROTC. So at least has a tie into all three branches. Very much a cybersecurity practitioner. His primary responsibility is on solving tough security challenges. So we're hoping today Elvis is going to share with us some real world experience, advice on how to approach some of the cybersecurity challenges we're seeing, some of the regulatory burdens of CMMC, some of the threats we're seeing out there, and the best ways to approach those. So Elvis, thanks for welcome and thanks for joining us today. Elvis, you're on mute still.
Yeah, I was. Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks, Ed. It's good to be back to talk to you. We had a great conversation last time we met, so I'm looking forward to this.
So first, congratulations to you on your new role at GDT. That's just recent, this year, 2021, right?
Exactly. Just started on Monday.
Great. So GDT is large IT integrator responsible for designing, building IT across a lot of different industries, including government, et cetera. How does a security professional, security practitioner like yourself fit into that space? What's your niche there?
So what we're going to do going forward is add value to the existing clients that we have. And so they might be buying or purchasing services from an IT-focused perspective, and that IT services going forward, we're going to integrate security as part of that overall methodology, so that not only do you just buy firewalls or routers and switches from us, but we're also going to include, as part of that methodology, a risk assessment to identify, what do you have regulatory issues? Why are you buying? Why are you upgrading this equipment? And is it a security related environment? Do you have some sort of statutory issues like HIPAA? And we're going to add value to all of our clients going forward, whether they're existing or new clients.
So as thinking about CMMC initiative, we've really seen that driving IT transformation and the kind of things that you just mentioned for a lot of companies. I think there's a little bit of I don't want to say a surprise, but it's heading in a direction that maybe not everybody saw coming. I think a lot of people viewed CMMC as more of a direct overlay of security controls, but as you start getting into the CMMC requirements, they really get into the nuts and bolts of IT management, day-to-day IT management. And as we've progressed down that path with a lot of companies, we've found that in many cases, it's turning out to be more than just a cyber project. It's really driving IT modernization. So things like cloud adoption, outsourcing of IT management, modernizing their infrastructure, among other things. How do you see CMMC specifically influencing people's IT decision making?
And I think you really have pointed out an issue that has existed for quite a long time in a lot of the defense industrial base. We have a lot of suppliers that are using legacy systems or legacy approach to managing IT. And now CMMC has opened their eyes to the 21st century, so to speak, And along with that, can we provide a better, wiser, stronger IT service to the government and to our internal corporate environment? By doing that, by opening your eyes to those issues, now you can say what makes sense in terms of cost and value. You're looking at the cloud because you can't buy all the bare metal that you need today. You need to look at a cloud as part of that solution, and security is also now integrated into that focus.
So one of the things I know that's a big part of your background is risk management, and specifically, thinking about risk considerations as part of the overall organizational strategy. So maybe even more than just IT decision making, but overall organization decision making. What's your perspective on how good risk management can elevate a regulatory compliance initiative like CMMC to be more than just a checklist, right? So it's a list of things you have to do, but how do we take it beyond a laundry list of required items and make it into something more meaningful by bringing risk management into that equation?
That's a really good question, Ed. I think this is something that we don't focus on enough in information security. I think the CIOs definitely in this sector look at value and what it does bring overall. And if you sit down and talk to this chief financial officer and the chief executive officer, and in some cases they're both wearing that same hat. If we, from a security perspective, bring value to the business in terms of better support, better security, better reliability, you're not going to have the downtimes that you would have in an unsecure environment. I think those are all part of the payoff here, as well as opening the door for new business. If you have the CMMC certification, you can use that as an additional qualifier for the business to win more business, so win more revenue. I think that's a positive here, not only in terms of service and quality, but opportunity that really needs to be communicated.
I mean, I see people who really try to make this as affordable as possible, right? It's an impact to their business. It's something they haven't had to do before. So they're looking for ways to keep it in bounds. There's other people that are looking at it more like the way you're describing, where they view it as a competitive advantage. And so how do people get that competitive advantage, right? How does that mindset shift from how do I meet this checklist as cheaply as possible to how do I maximize my benefits that I'm getting from this investment I'm making, this cost I'm taking on?
I think if you are talking to your registered practitioners, you're going to find that there is a number of individuals like you and myself out there that are available to talk to the business about providing value at the lowest cost or at the most optimal levels. And I think talking to the right people is really the place to start. And from a military background, if you remember, Ed, how do we build a capability? We started first with people, then process, and then technology. So it was people, process, and technology enabled us to meet the mission. And the same thing, I believe, goes with any kind of business, whether you're a small business, large business, or medium-sized business. Tap into the right resources. Start talking to the right people who are registered practitioners or who are, come with an expertise that can guide you through that process and establish the right standards that are going to be cost effective.
So a lot of the, we're still early in CMMC, right? It's been out about a year. And so it's still unfolding a little bit before our eyes. And a lot of the focus, a lot of the questions we get on these town hall sessions have been around the program mechanics. What's required? What do I have to do? How does it work? Who does the initiative apply to? Do I really have to do this? Those kind of questions. So some of those questions I would say are still unanswered. Some may never be answered because they're specific to individual circumstances. But I believe it's really important for companies to take action now to improve their cybersecurity posture. I don't think it's necessary to wait until all those questions are answered. What do you feel are some of the valuable first steps? Like as companies want to move out, and they have an increased emphasis on cyber hygiene coming at them from the DoD, from their customers, from large primes. How do folks get past the noise and focus on those things that really matter?
This is something I think that a lot of the vendors out there have jumped on and created that noise that you and I talked about earlier. You know, going out and buying a bunch of solutions, tools, and technology is not what I would recommend anyone do at this juncture, because you haven't really defined your needs or your requirements. And there's some definite research that I could share with the group, you know, as a follow-up. But when you do not identify your requirements, you could miss requirements that could cost you up to 50% of your overall, let's say, budget going forward. You have a CMMC budget. It could cost you up to 50% of that budget by not addressing all the requirements. And we could eliminate requirements that don't necessarily apply to you. So my best advice for anyone who's looking at CMMC for the first time: reach out, talk to a registered practitioner or someone at that level. So I'm not an RP yet. I will not be an assessor. I'm an assessor for the Department of Navy. So going forward, I'm going to wear a very different type of hat. I'll have separation of duties in my roles for CMMC. But talk to a registered practitioner and talk about first things being governance. Talk about your governance. If you don't have policies and process in place today to address configuration management and change management, so your techie issues and your management issues, that's a place to start. Start looking at your overall policies and your processes before you start jumping into buying technology.
I mean, and Elvis, frankly, that's a pretty powerful statement, given that you work for a value-added reseller, right? You work for a VAR who's in the business of selling these technologies, and so I think, you know, advising people to do some preliminary steps first is pretty relevant advice, I think. You mentioned the registered practitioners, registered provider organizations. So for anyone on the audience who hasn't seen it yet, a couple of weeks ago, this was published by the CMMC accreditation body on the CMMCAB.org website. They've started publishing their marketplace, so you can see listings of people who have achieved that status and organizations that have achieved that status. So to be able to shop with some confidence, again, that's been the promise from CMMC. We've heard them talk about it here on this this series. So that's now available on their website. So if you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to go check it out. New folks are getting on there all the time as they complete the process, the vetting process for those registration programs. So just as a side note, so Elvis, how I guess, in terms of effectiveness, I'll ask kind of straight up, does this work? So the companies, the folks that you've been working with that have been early movers on CMMC, that if they've taken your advice, taken some of these actions, what are you seeing as sort of tangible benefits? First of all, what are those first steps when you say focus on the governance? You know, what are the things that are actually seeing near-term quick improvements, and how's that paying off? Again, even before we get a CMMC certification, because that's still out in the future a ways.
I've seen improvements in acquisition decisions, planning, coordination, and overall communication that really didn't exist before. I've had a lot of business leaders come back to me and say, we never tracked this information. Now I know what the costs are. Now I know how many bodies I need or what the roles and responsibilities are, and not just go out and hire every CISSP in the world. Now I can say I need a security analyst versus a security engineer, or a security engineer versus a security architect. The ability to control and manage going forward has been one of the biggest benefits I've seen so far.
You mentioned configuration management, change management. I think these are functions that that are not operationally necessary for a lot of small businesses, right? So they don't have a business imperative to have them. They have a small shop, people know what's going on. Big company, you need those things or you have a mess on your hands. But a small company, you can effectively run IT without those things. But I don't think you can effectively defend against cyber threats without those things. So I think those, you mentioned those, and I think I want to highlight them. I think they're things that are not a natural part of a lot of small and mid-sized enterprises in terms of their day-to-day IT management, but a really critical part. The payoff obviously is about cyber defense, but I think there's other payoffs too. I think people will find that the level of control they have over IT spending and performance is going to increase as well. So I think there'll be some side benefits there. Do you agree?
I definitely agree, and that's really part and parcel of my pointing out those benefits is the fact that even if you are a small business, a small entity, just by understanding the concepts of configuration management and change management, you might not need the entire complex approach. But if you do implement some sort of change control or a configuration management practice, even if it's in a small cloud instance, that will give you so much payoff in the long run because you're going to be challenged. The Department of Defense is going to come in and their assessments are going to challenge you to meet these requirements, and you can do it more fast, more effectively if you're prepared. If you're not prepared, it's going to catch you off guard and it's going to create a lot of disruption to your daily business.
So something that's new in CMMC, at least new in terms of trying to measure it in a formal way, is the maturity aspects. So CMMC measures program maturity to see if the practices are institutionalized. That's in terms of government regulation or industry regulation of any kind. It's new. Having an auditable standard to measure maturity, new in the cyber realm. Obviously, we've had CMMI and other things in the software space. What are your thoughts on that being included in the standard? First, do you agree that it belongs in the standard? And if you do, what do you see as some of the benefits of putting this sort of formalized focus on the maturity aspect?
I think for the first time, it's going to give us the ability to look at a security capability within any organization, small, medium, or large, and look at what are you dedicated to delivering and how secure is it? So if you're just going to maintain a level 1 certification, that's great, and if that's all the requirements that you need to meet, that's perfect. But if you're wanting to expand your services, you need to get to that level 3 certification. You need to provide a better quality type of service and expanded service portfolio to the government and other clients. Let's say you want to add commercial clients to that service offering. That's going to give you the ability. It is like crawl, walk, and run. You might want to just crawl for a while, then you want to walk, but then at some point you want to run into additional business, additional revenue streams. This is a perfect vehicle to use.
We've had some guests on here that are from the assessment side of things, the C3PAO side, or C3PAO candidates, and they've brought up the notion that the maturity really gives a lot of. They're really trying to assess how sure are they that these security controls are going to be functioning and effective in the future after the audit, and that's always a big challenge, right? So there's a lot of people that really specialize in getting past the audit, and CMMC is a new form of cyber audit, but I think it's interesting that it's really trying to address that, the stickiness of the controls. Does the auditor have faith in the fact that these are going to continue to exist after they walk out the door? And again, to me, putting some formality around that is pretty interesting. How do you think companies what are the moves they should make to achieve those maturity goals? So if people you mentioned looking at governance. So if people want to focus on that, taking your advice, and they want to institutionalize security, bake it in, if you will, what are the key moves to make at the beginning of that process?
So after you establish good governance, the roles and responsibilities are paramount to managing processes going forward. And your question about how does the controls stay in place and how do they continue to work after the assessment, the assessment is just a point in time. It's ongoing processes. So that ongoing change management focus, that ongoing continuous monitoring, if you're going to outsource that to a partner, they're going to help you maintain that continuous monitoring capability and implementing that control over the entire life cycle. So roles and responsibilities are the next step beyond governance. Governance, roles and responsibilities as part of that governance focus, and then maintaining the processes will keep you in compliance and also keep you delivering good quality service.
I think, one of the things that at NeoSystems we've looked at in terms of what services do we want to take to our clients, as a managed service provider, one, we need to have that institutionalization in order for our services to work effectively across a large number of clients. But we're delivering them to clients in that same way, with the intention that, it's not just an assessment. It's not just getting you ready for the audit. It's running a security operation before, during, and after the audit. So on that ongoing basis. And I think that, that's a mindset that we've kind of baked into how we interact with our clients, is, making sure that we focus on that institutionalization. I'm really happy to see it in the standard, obviously, so it makes it a firm requirement, not just a good idea. But it's something that for sure has been, I don't know, kind of a cornerstone of us as we've thought about how to align our services with CMMC. As you start your work with GDT, what are the changes that you hope to bring to that company and the way that the GDT delivers services to clients? I mean, is some of that being informed by CMMC and some of the things you're seeing?
Absolutely. That is part of the discussion that we're having at this moment. How can we help the defense industrial base, kind of really ramp up in terms of learning and in terms of practices and policies. So this is a new focus for GDT, but it's also a high priority, not only as an integrator, but as a true partner with our clients and our potential clients. And I think you mentioned it too. This is an ongoing approach that will bring a better quality level of service, not only to our customers' clients and the government, but that relationship we have as a service provider with our current customers, that's going to morph and that's going to change. The advisory role will come into play, and the level of trust, I think, will become greater. You're just not going to be seen as a technology salesperson. You're going to be seen as a real trusted advisor to their business.
This may be a little bit of a speculative question, but I mean, you're coming from a heavy Department of Defense, military and military industrial complex background, and you've gone now to work with a company that has a mixture of commercial work, some of which has maybe no relation to the government at all. What's your thought on the benefits of CMMC and sort of the government ways of doing things on the commercial sector? So I'll give a little bit of a background before I toss that question out. I mean, we've seen in the Cyberspace Solarium Commission talks about threats against not just the defense industrial base, but all of industry within the United States of America by our adversaries, and the need for a national level response. And in talking with folks from there, the discussion, Mark Montgomery, the executive director, mentioned, one of the ideas is to make security everybody's job, right? To get the entire nation engaged. That's a big challenge. That's not going to happen overnight. CMMC is happening in 5 years for the entire defense industrial base, but that kind of transformation at the national level, obviously a much longer range. Yeah, I mean, where do you see that going? What are you specifically thinking about doing in terms of taking some of the things you learn in your work with in the military industrial world out into the commercial sector?
So this was one of the topics at a roundtable that Jamie Dimon spoke at. And Jamie Dimon is the chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase. At that time, he was being educated about a recent data breach at Chase. And he came forward in his statements and just presented to the entire world that the financial services sector at that point faced the largest threat that it faced here in North America for the financial services sector was cybersecurity and cyber threats. So I think each of the critical sectors, whether it's healthcare or financial services or the energy sector or even the IT sector, they're realizing that change needs to happen. And I think CMMC is one of those examples that we're going to be able to point to that say we made a positive change, we established a standard approach, and we used Nist, which is really paid for by the taxpayers. We're all paying for national standards in cybersecurity. We're just not well educated about those standards. So I think this is a test case going forward that the entire all 16 critical sectors can look at going forward and say, what were the lessons learned? How can we adopt those lessons learned and the standards that are really readily available for us to use and save some money and additionally provide good services and secure services to our clients?
I mean, the Nist standards, yeah, I've had people ask me, do I have to do this if I'm not in the DoD world or I'm not I'm not a part of a government agency? Do I have to do this? And my response typically is, why would you not want to, right? It's the best thinking. It's the best thinking we have. As you say, it's taxpayer funded. There's a lot of smart people have given a lot of thought to how to secure those systems in the best way. So no, if you're not strictly tied to a regulatory requirement, you don't have to meet the letter of the law, but you certainly can still draw a lot of guidance from those standards, and definitely want to encourage that.
And that, let me point out, that is one of the biggest myths I think I've heard in the past 30 years I've been involved in technology and security. Is Nist is only for a federal agency, or it's only for a federal contractor. That is such a big myth. There has been over 40 countries contribute to the Nist standards and thousands of professionals. And I'm talking scientists, engineers, researchers, not just security weenies, but we're talking about big business people, including people like Jamie Dimon and business leaders in other sectors that have contributed greatly to the standards that have been developed and published by Nist. So I think we're doing a poor job of educating all of our clients and in each of the sectors about the value that Nist brings to the table.
Appreciate it. I think I definitely would agree. So I've just got a minute or so left. I just want to ask you kind of a quick wrap-up question here. So as a practitioner, as somebody who's in the weeds, as it were, you're dealing with real-world challenges. Like many of us, you've been watching CMMC with an eye towards how it's going to materialize in actual security programs and in IT designs. So from that perspective, do you have sort of one top suggestion for the DoD that would improve or optimize the bang for the buck that we're getting out of the CMMC program?
I think if we look at educating the contractors as this is not only a requirement, but this is going to improve your business in the long run. I think when we have those type of conversations, people are going to be more willing to adopt CMMC, as not only a standard, but just a mandated requirement, but a standard to do business going forward that I think will return dividends time and time again. You can go from a small player and move into the middle, more larger offering of your services to a greater amount of people if you can prove that, hey, not only are we providing services to the government, we're certified, we're secure, you can trust us.
There's a notion that underlies CMMC that is about, trying to give some financial incentive for good cyber hygiene, right? Trying to make that really pay off in the way that you're describing. So I think that philosophy is under there. I think more emphasis on it could be good. So far the emphasis is on here's what you got to do and here's how you do it. I mean, because again, we all have questions about the mechanics, but I like that. I like that idea. I think that's the promise of CMMC, is that people view, I'll say that the folks that have been coming to these sessions, bias towards early adopters, right? The stragglers aren't showing up for these town halls. It's folks that really want to do the right thing, that are serious about it. And I think there's probably a large percentage of them that view it as a competitive advantage. They view it as a way to make their company more successful, more valuable. So I think people are adopting the mindset that you're suggesting. I see it out there, so that's good news.
I think for the first time, when you get people like you and myself together, and Katie, from DoD, for the first time now, we're talking about the long-term benefits of good cyber hygiene. It's not just a mandated requirement, it's a business enabler. Finally, we're talking about enabling business to grow in terms of quality, secure services, and expansion.
Well, good, Elvis. We're kind of at the end of our time, so I appreciate your insights today. Very, very helpful, very valuable. I think some good food for thought for folks that are trying to do the right things about what are the right things. How do you embrace that and get started? So I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank the audience members for their time today. Please do join us for future town hall meetings. Our next session is going to be Wednesday, January 13th at the same time slot, 1 p.m. Eastern. I also want to mention a half-day cybersecurity summit that we're doing on January 28th. This is going to explore the entire path to CMMC, including legal interpretation, how to fill gaps, the assessment process, so the entire life cycle of CMMC. Please watch for an invitation if you're on our mailing list, or head over to our website, neosystemscorp.com, for details on that event. Thanks, everybody, and have a good day.